What is up, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Flashback Podcast. I am your host, Johnnie Arnold, and on this episode, I'll be covering the year 1979, which was the end of the 70s disco decade, so stay tuned. So right now, we will be starting off with some iconic movie releases of 1979. Superman, although it was released in 1978, carried over into 1979 due to its December 15th release date. Domestically, it grossed around $93 million and grossed around $135 million worldwide. So I put together a list of the top 10 biggest movies that were actually released in 1979. And this list is going to start with the Amityville Horror, Rocky II, Star Trek, the motion picture, Alien, Apocalypse Now, 10, The Jerk, Moonraker, Meatballs, and Escape from Alcatraz. Of course, 1979 didn't just bring along great movies. Some of the biggest music albums that were released in 1979 were the Eagles, The Long Run, Pink Floyd, The Wall, Led Zeppelin, In Through the Outdoor, Donna Summer on the Radio, which was Greatest Hits Volumes 1 and 2, Bee Gees' Greatest, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Damn the Torpedoes, Styx, Cornerstone, Michael Jackson, Off the Wall, Dan Fogelberg, Phoenix, and Bob Dylan's Slow Train Comin'. And of course, 1979 didn't lack on any major news stories, and here's a few of them that I'm going to tell you about. The first one was the 3 Mile Island accident, and this was a partial meltdown of a nuclear reactor that was located in Pennsylvania. It began approximately around 4 o'clock in the morning on March 28, 1979, and based on a 7-point international nuclear event scale, with a 7 being the highest, the 3 Mile Island accident rated a 5. China in 1979 institutes the 1 child per family rule, and this rule was, of course, implemented in the early 80s. This caused a major rise in the abortion of girls due to the males being legal inheritance to the family's properties and being in charge of the well-being of the elderly. Now, in other news from 1979, the trivia game Trivial Pursuit was launched. And, of course, we just spoke about this. Pink Floyd's album The Wall was released. The USSR invaded Afghanistan. Margaret Thatcher is elected Prime Minister in the UK. Sony released the Walkman. The very first snowboard is invented in the USA. Lord Mountbatten and 3 others were assassinated. And 63 Americans are taken hostage in the American embassy in Tehran. So stepping away from some of those negative news stories from 1979, I thought it would be cool to give you guys a list of a few celebrities that were born in 1979. So if you yourself were born in 1979, these are a few celebrities that you share a birth year with. We're going to start with February 21st, and that was Jennifer Love Hewitt. And she is best known from playing in the show Party of 5 and The Ghost Whisperer. March 18th, Adam Levine from Maroon 5. April 5th, Luke Evans, who I know best from Dracula Untold. June 21st, Chris Pratt, who is best known for his role in Guardians of the Galaxy as Star-Lord, and he's one of my favorite actors. July 6th, Kevin Hart, and he is, of course, known from the newer Jumanji movies. August 1st, and this is for the ladies out there, Jason Momoa, best known for his roles as Aquaman, and he also did some work in Game of Thrones. And, of course, in 2011, he did a remake of Conan the Barbarian. I tell you, that was really, really good movie. Very violent, but very good. And I'm not a big fan of remakes, but I have to say that remake was really good. And September 8th was Pink. And my wife, Tina, is a huge fan of Pink. So there you go. If you are, of course, if you're a 79 baby, then those are some of those celebrities that you share a birth year with. Now, of course, being a huge fan of video games, I'm kind of now going to implement and combine arcade games that were released and Atari games. I'm just going to wrap them all into one big package here. Some of the biggest video games of 1979 were Asteroids, Star Trek Phaser Strike, NFL football, and video chess. Now, once again, I was only a year old in 1979, so I remember nada directly from that year. But I do love, even to this day, many of the movies, music, and actors that were born that year. So remembering back, there was an Amityville Horror, and it starred James Brolin, who was, of course, the father of Josh Brolin, who played the infamous role of Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, who can deny that the Amityville Horror is still one of the creepiest movies out there? And of course, it was based on true events, which makes it even creepier. Now, of course, they try to do a remake starring Ryan Reynolds back in 2005, but it failed to hold up to the original, in my opinion. It wasn't a horrible movie. It just wasn't the same. And then there was Alien, which has always been one of my favorite sci-fi horror movies of all time, and introduced me to the dark and twisted artistic world of H.R. Giger. H.R. Giger was so well known for his artwork that it was used in the creation of the 1992 PC game Darkseid, and one of his pieces was actually used for the album cover for Danzig 3, How the Gods Kill, which was also released in 1992. And speaking of music, one of my all-time favorite bands, Pink Floyd, introduced to the world what is probably the most famous of all their albums, The Wall. And if you have never seen the movie Pink Floyd's The Wall, it was released in 1982. And if you are a fan of Pink Floyd, I absolutely recommend you check it out because you, my friend, have been missing out. So if you guys don't know, I am a huge fan of the MCU. And one of my favorite actors of modern movies right now is Chris Pratt. As I mentioned earlier, he was born in 1979. He has put so much life and energy into playing the role of Star-Lord that I could never see anyone else playing that role. Just like Christopher Reeve is my movie Superman, Michael Keaton is my movie Batman, Chris Pratt will forever be my movie Star-Lord. Now, flashing back to when I was a younger lad at the mall arcade, there she sat, alongside with the newer arcade games of the day was Asteroids. If you had ever gotten the chance to play Asteroids, you will remember all it was a black and white screen with a triangle in the middle that I guess represented a spaceship or something. And you would sit and shoot asteroids that would break up into smaller chunks while you were trying not to get smashed by one. 1979 brought about some really cool and innovative products such as Trivial Pursuit and the very first snowboard. The movies and music of 1979, such as Alien and Pink Floyd's The Wall, were unique and beautifully done with talent that we just don't see nowadays. Even the game Asteroids was so simple yet so compelling and fun to play that kids would play it for hours on end, or at least until their quarters ran out. Now, in the next episode of the Flashback Podcast, we'll be moving into the 80s and talking about my wife Tina's birth year, 1980. So please make sure to come on by and check it out. I am Johnnie Arnold. Peace out.